What are you going to do about it? And I shook my fist, pointed my finger, mouthed a couple of profanities, called him a number of names. I know you son of a bitch. I know who you are, and I know what you're doing.
Okay.
And about the time I really am giving them hell, I'm sure they thought, all right, we've got his attention. Off it went. First of all, totally black, no markings violation. Hovering over a private residence violation.
Sure.
You know, they don't care. It was an intimidation. And this was right after I had went public.
Okay.
Other than the phone calls and the Black Huey and all of the rest of it, you know, I've had people come up to me at conferences, guys, who would not introduce themselves and would, suits, you know what the term suits means?
Sure.
Three-piece with vest, typical government agency type thing. You've been speaking out pretty bluntly about this. Why are you doing this? Well, who are you? Well, never mind. Why are you doing this? Well, first of all, the truth has to be told. Oh, yeah? You think you know the truth? And I think, well, I know some of it. How's that? As a matter of fact, I know quite a bit of it. That's even better. The sheer anger that I felt over what the government was doing to people to keep the lid on this. It violated every concept of my whole idea of life and honor and democracy and fairness and decency. And then I began to realize that the government we think we've got is not the government we have. And I said this publicly to people in conferences. I said, you people out there blithely think you live in a democratic republic. Well, you don't. And then it's all come out over the years, the shadow government. We don't know who they are. We have no idea. We have an inkling of who they might be. But these guys are unelected. They are not responsible. They don't have any responsibility to Congress, to the people, to the country, to anything. And they're running the damn program. And that drives me up the wall. I could almost kill. My sense of anger is so deep over that these self-appointed so-called experts that are running this program and keeping this the greatest story in human history from people, the people have a right to know. And let me tell you why I say that. I shared this with Bill. I have always believed that if this were to come out totally, as big as it is, as dynamite as it is, that it would bring about an expansion of consciousness in people. That we would stop thinking of ourselves as Muslim, Christian, Jew, whatever. We would think of ourselves as human beings from one little tiny planet on the edge of a middle-class, mid-sized galaxy. And that knowledge in itself would bring us together as a species and as a race. And I thought, that is our survival. If we can bring ourselves together and think of ourselves as one race, one people. This knowledge that we're not alone and we've never been alone, I think would do that. But the story is so big, honey. Let me tell you something else. Over the years I've learned. What I learned in 1967 was nothing compared to what I've learned since, over the years, digging in, talking to people in high positions. I've almost come to the conclusion that the story is so damn big that the government may be right. That the mass of people can't deal with it. How do you tell people that this species, this race that we are all a part of, is a hybrid race? That we were genetically created by an extraterrestrial intelligence. How do you tell them that? Carefully. You look around and you tell them carefully, depending on where you are. Now, if you're in Baghdad talking to some Sunnis or Shia, you don't even bring the damn subject up. How do you tell them that every major religion on the planet has been initiated and orchestrated by extraterrestrial intelligence? How do you tell Christian fundamentalists that that lovely man from Galilee 2,000 years ago was a part of that program. You don't tell them that unless you've checked the exits and know how the hell you can run and get out of the house.
Okay,
You don't bring these subjects up. How do you tell them, for example, that this contact and these abductions is that the genetic program is still underway? That these people that are pulled out of their bedrooms and their automobiles at night and are examined and samples taken and all, and it is shocking to them, and it is frightening to them, and it's harrowing to them. When they finally have to confront it, and maybe through hypnotic regression they have to deal with it, how do you tell them that that's part of the ongoing genetic development program?
But how do you not tell them when they're in the millions, you know? When there's so many of them out there right now that are just as aware as you are, and as I am, and Bill, you know, and Marcia. I mean, we are not in the minority as much as we think we are. And that's the interesting problem, is that the government and what they planned to do all those years back when they were running the country, which they're not anymore, you know, wasn't the best decision they made back then, and now it's the worst thing to keep the secret going. And you obviously believe that it's still important to wake people up.
I still believe that there are great masses
today
of people out there who can deal with it. You didn't fall to the floor sobbing when I just told you that this is a fact. This is not just my idea.
Sure.
These are facts that I have verification for.
Okay.
You see, I know that I've talked to people on the inside. I've had people come and share with me who are on the inside.
I bet.
And say, let me tell you. I've had military officers share with me. I had men working for me, he said, outside of Las Vegas, that when they were confronted with this, I had grown men with combat experience who broke down and cried like babies. He says, they can't deal with it. I've had to send these men off to another assignment somewhere. They couldn't deal with it. They came face to face with an alien and broke down and cried like babies. Now,
okay, but
you say you can deal with it, right?
These are people that have bought into a certain mindset that a lot of people on the outside, and I mean the civilians, never bought into anyway. I mean, it just depends who you're talking to. But you and I know that we're in a world that is changing faster than anyone can even think.
You're in a world that isn't at all what you think it is.
Exactly.
As I have said to you many times, you are living at the moment inside of, part of, one of the galaxy's finest, ripest zoological gardens. And if you think I've just told you you live in a zoo, you do live in a zoo. Now, I don't know how this deals with your sense of ego and your self-respect and who you think of yourself you are, but you're an animal living in a zoo. Now, how does a mass of people confronted with this reality going to deal with this? You're unusually enlightened and bright on this subject because I think you have informed yourself.
Of course.
You purposely tried to learn what it was all about.
That's right.
So you've taken little bits and pieces of this and absorbed them and digested them and chewed them and masticated them, and little bits and pieces at a time. Mm-hmm. So you got a pretty good smart there about what's really happening. And you're still walking around like a normal human being.
Sure.
But you're an exception.
Who is it that's coming to you? I mean, Majestic. What about Majestic? You familiar with the Majestic 12?
Yes.
Well,
they don't call themselves that anymore, but
I understand. What do they call themselves? What's their new name? You know it?
Yeah, well, it used to be. PI-40 was the last term I heard.
PI-40. All right, well, that's fine. So there's 40.
I don't know what the hell that means. There's probably 40 members of it now.
Uh-huh. And have they approached you?
I've met several of them, yeah.
Uh-huh. because they know you're very well informed.
Well, we get back to the subject here we were talking about just briefly earlier. Why the hell have I gotten away with what I've
Okay.
succeeded in doing?